Good day, Sir Concho. We are the Uys, and with my groupmates Tracy, Varik, and Jamar, we will present Paraiso, the glorious resolution of the Inglorious, or Smoky Mountain Government Complex.
So for our manifesto, so our project Paraiso, which is the new Philippine capital complex, generally aims to symbolize a ray of light and a movement towards nationalism. So our group intended that this project development would mirror the manifesto that the government is for the people and for the country. So our chosen site has been recognized as the inglorious landmark of Manila, and it's one of the well-known landfill in the country and even worldwide. And yeah, it embodies poverty. So with this established connotation, so we wanted to make a symbolic statement that the government can resolve poverty, so that the government should serve the people and the country. And so the conceptual statement we have formulated is the glorious resolution of the inglorious Paraiso, which aims to reflect our manifesto throughout the project. So for our site, so it is in Smoky Mountain in Tondo, Manila, having approximately 113,000 square meters. So this project has also been formulated considering its immediate vicinity or the entire Kokomo Island for future development.
The site analysis is in this part. We will discuss the following: user activity, sensor experience, transport analysis, vegetation, and water analysis.
So this is the user and activity analysis within a 500-meter radius. So the social class present around the site is within low to middle income class. So around the site, there are residential, leisure, commercial, and institutional activities such as elementary schools, sari-sari stores, and other local businesses. Next slide, please. To continue, so around the site, there are industrial businesses such as logistic activities for shipping and more. So there are also leisure areas like swimming pools and parks. So with this, there are plenty of people around the site, and we consider this through having public parks accessible to them in the complex, which are the historical sanctuary and the terraces. Next slide, please.
This slide is the overview of our sensor experience analysis. This includes the sight or the views, auditory or noise existence, olfactory or odor presence, and tactile or the current condition and use of some elements of the site. Primarily, its location is beside a busy street and a medium intensity mixed use zone. We wanted to buffer the noise while giving a vista or a good view of the vicinity. Second is history, where we want to defeat the inglorious image of the site to one that is glorious. Lastly, we want to design a building for the people. We will not be going into detail about the said parts. Still, it was essential for the group to analyze the site in the context of sensory experience because it gave us a grasp on how we can design our complex. Next, please. Aside from the sensory experience discussed earlier, we also tried to analyze the transportation around the site. And through the analysis, we developed routes for the Egypts and pedicabs. Next slide, please.
So this is the vegetation and water analysis of the existing site. So since there are little vegetation in and around the site, we developed the site based on this issue through providing enough amount of greeneries in the site. And since the site is surrounded by water, we took advantage of this through making the water part of the vistas of this project. Next slide, please.
So moving on to our master plan. So here's a 3D plan of the general master plan of our complex. So generally, the entire complex is surrounded by heavy greeneries, parks, and water feature, which binds the entirety of the project. So this goes back to our manifesto of transforming Smoky Mountain into a paraiso. So the executive building has been isolated on the upper left of the site to ensure security and privacy, while the Supreme Court has been placed right in the middle right in the middle to break the connotation of the Supreme Court being an aloof. And we also wanted to establish an impression of being open and transparent. And then lastly, the House of Representatives and the Senate have been near each other as they both function as the legislative branch, which works on laws and provisions. So here's an isometric view naman of the master plan. So on the design elements of each typology, so our group incorporated Solihia pattern glass panels on our structures to reflect the manifesto of symbolizing the project as a ray of light for the marginalized. As Solihia patterns are sunburst patterns, so next, the structures have also been heavy on glass to mirror transparency of the government. So next, here we also incorporated a palm terraces and a history sanctuary, which are both open to the public. So this aims to bring the Filipinos closer to the government and also to establish confidence in it. And at the same time, it also aims to fight issues against disinformation and misinformation.
Here is the access map of the site. We wanted to make the site as permeable and porous as possible for the users. That is why we allocated access not only for pedestrians but also for vehicles inside the site. However, we wanted to make it a human-centric one, which is why we placed the road only at the perimeter of the site. Next slide, please.
We tried developing the whole of Kokomo Island, wherein we used streets to connect the whole island, and we were able to create Egypt and pedicab routes. Next slide, please. To continue the access map, we added basement parking for the complex. This slide shows the different entrances and exits for the public, employees, and VIPs. Um, Basement entrances, employees access, utilities, and parking slots. We were able to put 1,959 parking slots, which gives over 460 plus slots for every building. Also, we secured specific entrances and exits for the public, employees, and VIPs, ensuring their safety. And as you can see, there are utility rooms colored brown for every building. Moreover, we will have a one material waste facility which will have the loading, segregation, and collection areas. Next, please.
Here is the palm terraces located in front and at the back of the site. It is a public park open for social and leisure activities. This park is completely open for anyone and it brings the people closer to the government. Next slide, please.
Okay, so next we have the History Sanctuary, which is a public park aiming to promote nationalism and also to provide an opportunity to raise awareness among the Filipino people about its rich history and culture. So this is a perspective. So this sanctuary will hold the pathway of greeneries and its wall will be filled with information and artifacts from our history and culture. So this aims to remember the Philippine culture and history and also Smoky Mountain stories to reminisce the glorious end of the inglorious. So here's another perspective of the sanctuary. So again, it will display history and culture for the Filipino people's benefit and knowledge.
Now for the processionals and vistas. So these are 8 race park that will provide internal vistas around the site connected to pathways that gives off a comfortable impression and a user experience when walking towards one point from another, creating these processionals. Next slide, please. So each park will provide different vistas to each of the government buildings, depending on where pocket park you are standing in. Through these processionals and vistas, it can create legibility for the users and the visitors, as well as provide a clearer view of the site. Next slide, please. So here's another perspective of one pocket park. Next slide, please. And here's another one. Next slide, please. So moving on to the individual typologies. Next slide. Starting off with the executive complex. So my personal typological manifesto for this executive complex is becoming one with the people. The executive department, being the highest branch in the government, plays a big role in the lives of the people. That is why I decided to apply and incorporate a design or a concept that is inspired by the lives of the unprivileged. This concept will be further be elaborated in the individual submission, but for now, let's move on to the site development plan of the complex. So we purposely isolated the executive department from the other branch because we prioritize the security and privacy of the executive people and admins such as the president and his family or her family. Next slide, please. We also thought that the executive complex can work independently compared to other branch. Hence, the reason why we isolated it, as well as the basement parking as discussed a while ago. Next slide, please. So for the zoning, building zoning, the public zone is the blue one and the private zone is the yellow one. Next, please. So this is the functional zoning. The purple one is the presidential museum, which is the public zone. Then the green one is the presidential, where the private quarters of the president are located together with his family, separating work from home. Then yellow one is the administrative zone, where the administrative offices are located. Next slide. Here's a perspective of the presidential buildings. The opening in the building were also inspired by the artistic concept distill, which I also used in the form finding. Then I added this red accent to the facade to add a little bit of sharpness. And next slide, please. So here's another perspective of the building. Next slide.
The next individual typology that we are going to discuss is the Senate. Next, please. As mentioned, our group's manifesto of the government is for the people and the country, mirroring our site plan concept of the glorious resolution of the Inglorious or the Paraiso Island, and now resonating with the Senate building concept of having reachable guidance for all Filipinos. The Senate is and the House of Representatives are the ones who curate regulations that ensure the preservation of freedom and moral agency. And the Senate building is a structure that will be the guide for Filipinos. Next, please. The position of the Senate will be on the southwest of the elevated complex. It will be beside the House of Representatives on its east, and the structure will be close to the two of 8 pocket parks in the complex. Next, please. The structure overlooks the R10 road and the neighborhood around the vicinity, and since the building can see the current condition of its surrounding, it can somehow ignite the leaders to serve the people to the best of their capabilities. Next, please. Moving on to the building zoning. The Senate will have 4 spaces: public, semi-public, semi-private, and private. And these are color coded as blue, orange, yellow, and purple, respectively. Next, please. Next is the building programs. Can I go back? Well, for the building programs, as mentioned, there are 4 parts. The blue areas are open to the public, and that is the library building. Next is the semi-public or the orange, which houses the cafeteria, ballroom, plenary, and Senate hall. Next is the yellow, which is semi-private and includes a museum, a clinic, meeting rooms, 2 lounges, dignitaries, and committee rooms. Lastly, the purple is private building that houses staff amenities, secretariat, and senator offices. Next, please. Now for the building circulation, the whole building will utilize elevators, escalators, stairs, and fire exits to access one floor to another. Next, please. For the building utilities and for this building, the utilities will be located beside the elevators as shown in the slide, and the size per utility room is around 2 square meters. Moving on to the perspective views. Next, please. As you can see, the Senate building is not high because I want it to be reachable for Filipinos, meaning they can reach or they are close to those guiding them. Next, please. Here you can see that I incorporated the glossolia panel, which, as mentioned, represents the sunburst, which symbolizes rays of light for the marginalized. I use these panels to control the sunlight inside the building and give the rooms more privacy. And my last perspective, next please. The rear view, where you can see a set of stairways going to the top of the building, where you can reach the Senate Hall. This represents the symbolism and the Senate building concept to have a reachable guidance for all. Next, please.
So next we'll be talking about the House of Representatives. Next slide, please. So for the manifesto, it is the embodiment that a better future is possible no matter the past. A structure where all Filipino can look up to, following the democratic values, openness, transparency, and participation. Next slide, please. For the site development, the building is surrounded by green spaces and pocket parks, which is easily accessible. It is located beside the Senate building, as both are legislative buildings. So there are 3 entrances and exits in the building. The 2 entrances are accessible to the road, while the 3rd is accessible through the park. Next slide, please. So this is the isometric view of the building. You can see the glass facade as part of the building tech, which helps conserve electricity, as hallways and rooms are naturally lit. Next slide, please. So for the zoning, the bottom area of the building is for the public, and the upper area is the private zone of the building. So for the yellow part, that's the office. The bottom part is for the common public. Next slide, please. So for the programs, again, the blue is for the offices, while the color red represents the session hall. So the other colors represent the amenities, utilities, and services for the public, like an outdoor ancillary, cafeteria, library, and more. Next slide, please. So for the building circulation, you can see that the elevators and stairs are easily accessible as part of the concept. So the hallways are wide and straightforward. Next slide, please. So this is the exterior perspective of the House of Representatives. Again, it is beside the Senate building, and both are connected and accessible through a park and pocket park in the middle. Next slide, please. Here's another peg of the exterior perspective. So here you can see the main entrance and the pickup and drop-off point of the building. Next slide.
So moving on to the Supreme Court. So for the typological manifesto, so justice should be seen to be done to protect proceedings against arbitrary and partial decisions. So having openness and transparency within the Supreme Court and the entire justice system is a vital point in serving the Filipino people. So that goes back to the manifesto of the government is for the people and for the country. So as mentioned, the Supreme Court has been placed right in the middle of the site for it to be highly visible, to break the connotation of the Supreme Court being aloof. So it intends to establish an impression of being open and transparent. So the design elements such as Solihia pattern glass panels, grand ramp system and the sun-frosted skylight and its overall form have been the key design features that translated the typological manifesto. So these will be elaborated on the individual slide presentation. So additionally, the structure blends with the site through the heavy greeneries with pop-up cafe, leisure spaces, art installations, water features, and seating spaces. So for the general circulation, so I have incorporated a grand ramp system for smoother flow of the users. And also there would be 2 fire exit stairs, 2 elevators, and 1 service elevator. So additionally, the circulation of the entire building has been developed based on public access, controlled access, and secured access. This is basically for security purposes. So this will be shown on the individual slide. So next, here we have the building zoning. So orange being private and blue for public. So the blue basically holds the discourse division and orange is for adjudication and administrative. So the basement is also for the secured access for VIPs. And then next, here we have the general building utilities. So a typical utility room will be provided on each level of the structure, containing pipe chase, mechanical room, electrical, and auxiliary rooms. So these utility rooms are located at the core of the building at the rear part, so here. And then at the basement, the main utility room is located, containing the genset room, transformer room, garbage, and pump room. So next we have an exterior render of the front side of the building. So here you could see the grand ramp system and at the end part. So the rear part shows you the Solihia glass pattern. So that ends our presentation. So this is the Paraiso project, the glorious resolution of the inglorious.